This is an Eye on Annapolis bonus podcast.
Well, I'll tell you, Paul Mecurio is an Emmy and Peabody award-winning comedian who currently works on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert and appears regularly on that show. Also worked with The Daily Show, The Colbert Report, had specials on HBO, Comedy Central. His podcast, Inside Out with Paul Mecurio, had guests such as Paul McCartney, Kevin Costner, Bryan Cranston, Kira Sedgwick. And now the man has hit the big time and joins us today on Eye on Annapolis. Man, how are you doing, Paul?
I'm great. I'm nice to be on with you, and you're right. I'm excited about being down there and hitting the big time with you.
That's true. Well, Paul will actually be here in person in Annapolis at Ram's Head on stage for one show only, and it is the only show in the area, so you're not going to be able to catch him anywhere else. But that's Friday, right. February 9th, and I did just go and peek, and there are a few tickets left, and when I say a few, I'm talking a handful and a couple fingers.
And I'm very excited about it. Everybody's saying what a great venue it is, and I lived in D.C. I know that's not right next to Annapolis, but sort of in the general area. I've never been to Annapolis, so I'm very excited about the whole thing.
It is, and I'm a little bit biased, but it is a great venue. It does win awards. It's a small room. It's only like 300 people, but there's no bad seats, and it's pretty intimate. It's pretty cool. I remember seeing Bob Saget there before he passed away, and he was just absolutely fabulous. Just to see him up close and personal, and to realize that Danny Tanner is a filthy comedian. You know?
You know, exactly right. It's like he went the other way. It's like I always liken him to like an 11-year-old who turned 12 and realized he could say dirty words and like just said as many as he could.
That would be George Carlin's bit, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just jailing.
How do the people who make Vaseline make any money? I have had the same tub of Vaseline. Right? The guy with the glasses, am I right? My Vaseline was handed down to me by my grandfather in a will. You've never heard this phrase uttered in the history of mankind. Honey, I'm going out to get more Vaseline. You could go through 50,000 bags of garbage. You're not going to find one empty container of Vaseline. One time, I almost threw my Vaseline out. I'm like, I don't recognize these fingerprints. I think my wife is cheating on me. Screw it.
Well, I'll tell you, you are a comic. You are also a lawyer and an investment banker on Wall Street, I guess by education.
Yeah.
You're not one of those ambulance chasing lawyers because you went to Georgetown Law. They don't allow you to do that once you graduate from there.
Right, but they let you go into comedy.
Well, so, I mean, you gave it all up for stand-up. I mean, did you hate your mom or something?
Well, I do hate my mom. It's interesting to say that. She's 96. And,
oh, God bless her.
Oh, no, she will not go down. We try everything. Sour milk, bad cheese. You trip her, she bounces back up like a little Italian weeble. It's adorable. So, I don't know. I just was like working on Wall Street. I was in New York working at a big law firm and then a big investment bank doing M&A deals. And, people always like, what is M&A exactly? Well, it's like, mergers and acquisitions. It's like when you eat, you have a salad and then you have a steak, and that's like the acquisition. And then a couple of days later, you relieve yourself. That's the merger. And I was the colon. It all went through me. And so I basically started writing jokes and comedy ideas in law school. I don't know why. I was living in this tiny apartment in D.C., and then I got to New York and started writing more jokes. And I met Jay Leno at a private function, and I got to see him just doing his thing. And I went up to him, and I had all these jokes in a passworded file at work because I didn't want anybody to get into my computer and see what I was doing. And I went up and I said, I don't know if you need jokes, but I'm never going to use these. You can have them. And he's like, okay. He really does talk like they're letting helium out of a balloon very, very slowly. And then you just want to go like, breathe. Just breathe a little bit when you talk, Jay. And then a couple of days later, he called me. And the phone rings, and it's like, it's Jay Leno. Is Paul there? And I thought it was my friend pulling a prank because there's no way Jay Leno would call me. And I'm like, yeah, really funny, David. He goes, no, really, it's Jay Leno. And I'm like, stop, I know it's not Jay Leno, and I'm really busy. I don't have time. He goes, no, it's Jay Leno. I go, it is not. He goes, it's Jay Leno. And I actually said to Jay Leno, you do a lousy Jay Leno. And sure enough, it was Jay Leno, and he said, "I'll hire you to send the jokes for the Tonight Show monologue and pay you $50 a joke." And then he mocked me. He was like, "What do you do for a living?" I go, "I'm a lawyer." He goes, "I knew it." I go, "Why?" He goes, "Too wordy. You write like a lawyer. You're writing a joke. Get to the punchline. You're not writing the Magna Carta, for God's sake." And so, and then about a week later, he did one of the jokes, and it just blew my head off my shoulders. And then I became obsessed with writing jokes and telling jokes. And I started to live a secret double life, where I was a lawyer, banker by day. I was like this dysfunctional superhero. And then I'd get in the car on a dinner break, and I would go to dive bars around New York City, and I would like take my jacket off like some weird superhero, and like I just had my little tie and white shirt on, and I would go to dive bars around New York City working open mic nights. And it was just crazy. And these were dives, like they were dealing drugs out of there. There was a hooker who worked in one, and she would actually give you notes on your joke when you got off stage. She was like a hooker with a heart of gold. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
There you go. That one didn't work out too well. So,
Yeah, exactly. So but it was really like a completely unexpected journey.
Well, apparently it's been pretty successful, because you've got an Emmy and a Peabody for comedy. And
well, it's not mine. It's Jon Stewart's. I took it from his office, so he doesn't say again.
Take the credit where credit's due. Okay.
Exactly.
But, so what type of comedy do we expect when Paul Mecurio comes to Ram's Head on February 9th?
Oh, a lot of weeping. I cry a lot during my show when I realize I'm sort of,
because your mother won't die, right?
Well, my mother, that's like my life. It's just my life. When you start out, I think you try to write stuff you think people are going to want to hear, stuff that's broad, like, McDonald's, what food or whatever. But then you get into it and you're like, you know what? I just want to talk about myself. So it's a combination of me, my backstory, how I look at life, and I comment on, so I don't do political stuff, but, social stuff in general, and about my mother, I will talk about her because she's had a big influence on my life, and she's still around, and she started her furniture business in 1960, ran it for 63 years. Wow. And we had to close it after 63 years, and we ran it with her. We had to live at home, and I was chained to a furnace, and you have no idea, John. It was horrible. And I was like working all the time. And then we said it was time to close the store, and she's mad because she wants to open a store somewhere else at 96. And we're like, you're not opening the store, because that means we're going to have to keep working in it, and we're adults now, and we're not going to do that anymore. And she's like, well, what am I going to do? I go, you're 96. I mean, you have your health. We'll take you to the senior center. She goes, I'm not going to go there. Those people are old. I'm like, you're old. You're 96. What do you think? You're going to go skydiving with Taylor Swift? You're old, okay? So, and she grew up in the Depression. So anybody listening knows you've got these family members that just will not spend money, because that just had like an impact on their life, right? So she will go through garbage on Sunday. I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island. When they leave the garbage out, she goes through garbage looking for good garbage, not food, but stuff that's broken. And then she has a friend, Mario, because everybody's got a friend, right? And he fixes stuff. And so she found her hearing aid in the garbage. I am not making this up. And it's terrible. It whistles like all the time. It's just like, and so like, when you talk to my mother, it's really like talking to a tea kettle in a house dress, basically. And so here's one reason we had to close the store, because my mother was locking customers in the store in the middle of the day. Okay. So I go there this is all true. I go there one day, the door's locked, and there's somebody in the store, but there's no broken glass. I'm like, what's going on? I go, man, what happened? She goes, well, I was looking around. I turned to ask your mother a question. I couldn't get out. I said, how long have you been here? She goes, 4 hours. I go, what have you been doing? She goes, well, I browsed a lot. She goes, I took a nap on that sofa. And she goes, your name, Paul? I go, yeah. She goes, well, the phone rang, and I took messages. She took messages for me, okay? And so I'm getting my mother, and I pull her aside when she shows up, and I go, Mom, you can't lock people in a store. What are you doing? She goes, well, I don't know what you're yelling at me about. The woman took that sofa she took a nap on so much, she's going to buy it. I made a sale, and I wasn't even in the store. I'm like, okay, you win. I'm dead. All right, fine. And so it's just slices of my life. And, I have a kid, and we talk about, when you have a kid, you're supposed to say it's the best thing that ever happened to you, and it's like, nah, there are some days you wish they'd walk into the woods and never come back, right? You just a little bit, right? Like you just like, and my son was 7, he had a baseball tournament, and my wife's like, you go father-son bonding weekend. And after 3 days alone with him on the road in a hotel, it hit me. I don't really care for the kid. I have to be honest with you. Very needy. I'm tired. I want to take a nap. I want food. Can you just stop, for God's sake? Like, and so, you know, we just basically, I just like to hit on what's going on in my life and like political correctness too. I like to talk about that. You know?
Well, with your work, you know, on late night, I mean, you said you sort of steer away from politics. I mean, how do you do that? I mean, because I know a couple of comedians that won't do colleges just because they're like, oh, you know, in 1973, I saw you, it was on YouTube. Somebody put a, you know, Super 8 thing on YouTube and you said, you know, whatever.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's an issue. I think you can either get mad about it or, I mean, the reason you can't talk politics now is it's not like the days of like William F. Buckley and Gore Vidal where you could have these sort of gentlemanly conversations about politics from both sides of the aisle. Now it's just people screaming at each other. It just doesn't work in a club, especially. And I go on CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News, and even there, like, it's just hard, right? But you can talk about, like I do think you hit it on the head about the Super 8 thing. I think people are out there just always looking to catch somebody, you know, like a gotcha moment. And I think social media has played into that and emboldened people, but not just in comedy clubs, but in real life. Like, so my wife and I, we live in New York City, and we're walking a dog in Central Park. And there's a law in New York, you're supposed to have your dog on a leash after 9 a.m. And our dog was on a leash, and this guy's dog wasn't on a leash. It was screaming. It was scaring people. It was like kids running around. The dog was going crazy. He was a big dog. And my wife goes, sir, excuse me, your dog, it really should be on a leash. Just like that. Like nothing more. Just, and the guy goes like this. Why? Because it's a pit bull? Like implying that we were like white racist people toward pit bulls or something. And I'm like, no, because it's got a baby in its mouth. That's why. Okay. Because it has prison tattoos and a gun. Okay. Will you stop? Like, listen, I don't know about you, but there was a time in my life, and maybe you did this, or maybe your parents did it with you, or maybe you did it with your kids. Every Halloween, my parents would dress me as a hobo. That's what they would call it. Because we didn't have money for a costume. So it was daddy's old clothes. They send you out, right? With a little knapsack or whatever. You couldn't do that today because it would be considered insensitive because, you know, it's homeless people. And it was kind of crazy and weird if you think about it. Because think about it. Our parents dressed us as homeless people and sent us out onto the streets at night to collect free food in front of real homeless people. True. And it sucked. I never got candy. Every house, baked beans and a harmonica. That was it. It was terrible. So I do think if you're a stand-up, you can push back. Like, you can talk about things that do make the people uncomfortable so that they can see, you know what, you can talk about uncomfortable things and we're all still alive and we're not going to die from it. So I think that's part of what I do in my act is I'm not politically incorrect for the sake of being politically incorrect. I think that's childish, but I'm not going to steer away from something that's potentially controversial just because somebody might get upset. Well, then just don't come see me. So, but I don't consider myself a controversial comic, but I do like to just talk about what's going on in the world.
Fair enough. Who's the best comedian ever?
I have ones that I like based on what they do. Like, I think Jonathan Winters is the greatest improvisational comic that ever lived. I think Steve Martin for his crazy inventiveness, George Carlin for his like very really pinpoint accuracy and like ability to kind of really analyze things in a way that nobody else does. So I like those three a lot. But I don't have one favorite that like encapsulates everything, you know. But it's been fun, and you know, and look, it was scary when I left Wall Street. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I left, and it's really cool. Like, I was having a nervous breakdown that I made a mistake. I was like, because I sold my apartment and I moved to a rooming house in New Rochelle, New York, for $325 a month, and I lived in a little like 10 by 12 room with a hot pot on the floor, and I shared a kitchen and a bathroom with like 8 other people, and 2 of them were two ex-cons, and one was a 300-pound phone sex operator who sold Herbalife diet products door to door, and that was my life. And then it was really hard in the beginning. You know, you're doing these terrible shows where nobody's paying attention in bar rooms. You're getting paid $20, and I was doing these huge merger deals, and I'm like, what have I done? I freaked out for a while, and I went back to Wall Street for a while. So it wasn't like a clean break. You know, it took me a while to really get my head around what I did, you know.
And $50 a joke wasn't cutting it from Leno, I guess.
No, it wasn't cutting it. I mean, look, I had a guy, I was at a club one night in the Bowery, and I was in my little white Brooks Brothers shirt waiting to go on stage. There's a poet, the folk singer on stage playing Blowing in the Wind badly. Like, yeah, it's bad. Like, worse than Dylan, if you can imagine that. And all of a sudden, there's a scuffle with the pool table. Guy runs out of the bar. The other guy grabs his arm. He goes, he cut me, man. He cut me. It was a drug deal gone bad. He cut him with like a box cutter, and he's bleeding, and he's drunk, though. He's drunk, and his girlfriend's crying. Oh, my God, look at my boyfriend. He cut me. He's screaming, I know where he lives. I'm going to get him. His girlfriend's crying. Oh, my God, what is it? The answer, my friend, the guy just keeps playing like he's not getting off, right? He doesn't care. He's literally playing through a slashing, right? So I'm next, but I think the show's over, so I make my way to the door, and I hear the MC go, all right, you guys ready for some comedy? I'm like, I go on stage and I say, it's nice to be here. I always wanted to follow a stabbing. And I thought that was a pretty good line. But the guy who heard me say that thought I was making fun of him, who got cut. And he goes, hey, you're making fun of me? I need to take this. And he takes all these bloody napkins that he had, and he throws them at me, and they stick to my shirt. Right?
Nice.
So I finished my set. I go back to the firm. I was gone 3 hours. I was supposed to be gone an hour, and they couldn't find me. The senior partner was losing his mind. You know when your dad, his mom screams at you like their veins are popping out of their head? It was like that. So I walk into a conference room. Now at this point, I couldn't change my shirt, so I had a file folder. And here I am, like an adult acting like an 11-year-old. I'm like, I'll just put this file folder against this grapefruit-sized blood stain right by my rib cage, and no one will notice it, right? So I walk in the conference room, and this guy's screaming at me like, where have you been? I couldn't find. Why do you have a blood stain on your shirt? And I didn't know what to say. I'm thinking, okay, I'm caught. My secret's out. So one of the other lawyers goes, before I could say anything, he goes, what kind of shirt is that? I go, it's a Brooks Brothers shirt. Well, he goes, oh, I know how to get blood out of a Brooks Brothers shirt. He goes, club soda and lemon juice. Then another guy goes, no, Armani, that's the shirt you want. I'm like, are you guys remaking American Psycho in your spare time? What are you guys doing here? So it was like this crazy journey, but it's obviously something I guess was really in me that I wanted to do, you know. It's crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about your podcast. It's called Inside Out with Paul Mecurio, and I do recommend everybody give it a subscription, give it a listen. And you've had a number of big names on there, but you've had probably the top of the A list, Paul McCartney, and I need you to tell me that he was like trying to call Bezos or something, and he dialed the wrong number and somehow got you. How do you get Paul McCartney on?
That really hurt. Thanks a lot. Thanks. Why don't you just say, when we're done with this interview, why don't you say, go see loser Paul Mecurio?
No, but how do you get Paul McCartney?
No, it's a great question. I know, it's crazy. So he was at the Colbert Show, and I'm working at the Colbert Show, and he was a guest, and he rehearsed, and he was done with rehearsal, and then it was time for me to go in the studio because I was doing something on the show, and I run down, they go down a set of stairs around the corner to make your way to the studio, and standing in the hallway all alone is Paul McCartney, just chewing gum, looking up at the ceiling like he's waiting for a bus, like all alone. And that's the thing that threw me more than anything, was that he had no security. He was all alone. And I'm frozen at that point, and and my whole world slows down. I'm like, oh my God, it's Paul McCartney. I'm like, should I say hi? Should I not say hi? And I'm like, you know what? He's alone, unguarded in a hallway. He's like a gazelle on the Serengeti Plains. I'm a lion. I'm going to pounce, right? So I go over and I say, it's an honor to meet you. So excited to hear your performance tonight. Big fan. Walk away. And he goes, wait, come back. I'm like, what? What do you want? I'm busy. I have things to do. No. He goes, what's your name? I go, Paul. He goes, oh, Paul. That's a good name. I'm like, I'll do the jokes, buddy. Okay, you just play your little songs, all right? Back off. He goes, what do you do? I goes, I want to stand up. I work on this show. I work on the Daily Show, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, oh, I love stand-up. We start talking about stand-up. And he goes, And then you get a kid? Yeah, I got a kid. Yeah, you tour? Yeah, it's hard. We start talking about touring, blah, blah. And I'm just talking to him like I'm talking to you. And on the outside, I'm smooth. I'm like, hey, I'm talking to Paul McCartney. On the inside, I'm like, I'm talking to Paul McCartney. Like I was out of my mind, right? Like those girls you see like in the Shea Stadium film or whatever. And as I'm talking to him, I'm getting closer and closer to his face because I'm checking him out because he's Paul McCartney and he's iconic and he looks amazing. And I was so close to him, John. Like at one point, did you ever see those chimps on the National Geographic channel where they clean fleas off their mates? I could have cleaned ticks off his eyebrows. Like that's how close I was to him. I was like the close talker in Seinfeld, and I had him pinned against the wall. So finally, I go, all right. This idea comes into my head, and I just blurt out, you know what? Would you do my podcast? I'd like to talk to you about how you make music. I just blurted it out, and he goes, yeah, sure, just like that. Now. At this point, I'm like, oh, okay. And then he goes, how would we do it? And I'm not making this up. This is what I sounded like. I froze and I went, and I started rubbing my leg like Rain Man and like rocking back and forth like I had some kind of problem. And I go, I'll come to London. He goes, we're in a room in New York together. Why would you come to London? And then he goes, is it easy to do? I go, oh, it's really easy. I don't want to be a bother. I know you're busy. You could do it on your phone naked from your toilet. I'm like, oh my God, what am I saying? I got to get out of here. So I say, all right, listen, I'll set this up with your assistant and we'll figure this out. And he goes, no. You and I'll do it. I go, what? He goes, they're just going to make it too complicated. You and I will do it. We're going to exchange numbers, but when I call you, you got to be ready to do it. I'm like, okay. So now I'm exchanging numbers with Paul McCartney, and he does the performance, and I'm running now. The show's over. I'm running to get to the Daily Show. I'm busy. I'm late. My phone rings. I don't recognize the number, and I let it ring the voicemail. And this is the message on my phone.
Hey, Paul, it's Paul McCartney here. I'm going to ring you back in 5 minutes to do the podcast thing. I got some time now. Otherwise, I'm going to run out of time. So if you're there in 5 minutes' time, you got me. Okay, bye.
And I have that saved in about 50 places. I have that saved in a vault. I have that in a tree. Like that's everywhere. And then I retrieved the message in the middle of Manhattan. I was screaming like a crazy person going, screen call, Paul McCartney. I was just ranting, yelling at myself. I threw my phone. Can you believe it? What an idiot I am. And then I got my phone. I called him. I had to stall him for an hour and a half. I finally got a recording line and we did the interview.
Unreal. I'm surprised you didn't call your friend and say, you don't do a good Paul McCartney.
Exactly. That would have been great.
Oh my God.
But, yeah, it was so crazy that and he was great. You know, we just talked about making music and his process of writing and everything else. And it was really like one of the highlights of my life, along with talking to you, of course. And, but no, he couldn't have been nicer. You know, they say the bigger they are, the nicer they are. He could not have been nicer.
I have heard that he is really very nice and very accommodating and everything else. For a friend that works for XM told me that, just a great regular guy.
Yeah, I think one of the things that helped, not that I had a plan, I did it for this reason, is that I didn't ask him for anything like an autograph or a photo. I heard he's not crazy about that because I'm sure he's gets bombarded with that. So I just, when I was talking to him, I really didn't want anything out of him other than to just be talking to this amazing genius. And then we just were talking like two guys like you and I are talking. And then I think because you've been around enough celebrities, like I work on these shows and you don't want to be fawning all over them. They just want to be treated like normal human beings. So I want to be fawned all over. So if you ever meet me in person, like I think you should totally fawn all over me. But the rest of the world, no. Okay.
So, we're going to have an opportunity to fawn all over you on Friday, February 9th at Ram's Head in Annapolis.
Yes, exactly.
At 8 p.m. I mean, tickets are available at ramsheadonstage.com, and there are a few left, so go get them right now because this looks like it's going to be an amazing show. One question I do often ask guests is if they weren't successful in their career, what would they be doing? And I guess we kind of know that answer. You'd be like doing mergers and acquisitions and lawyer stuff. But let's go back like when you were a little kid, when your mom had the store, just opened the store. What?
A carpenter.
A carpenter.
I loved carpentry work, like working with my hands. I loved woodworking, and I wanted to be a carpenter. And my father's like, no, my father put floors in for a living, and he kind of, beat up his knees and everything. And he goes, you're not going to work with your hands. You're going to work with your head. But I would do it all day. And if I didn't do this, I'd be doing that. I'd be terrible. Nothing would be square, and you'd like sue me if I worked on your house. But because I'd probably be drunk doing it, but I would do it. And but no, that's something I always loved doing. How about you? Like, if you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
Oh man, I'd probably be dead. I don't know. I was just talking to somebody earlier today and said, I have no right to be alive at this age, just from the stupid shit I did when I was younger.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I might have been in the medical field or something like that. I have no idea. I mean, it's my I was in construction management at one point, and I owned a bunch of travel agencies at another point, and
wow.
And then this was all started on a dare from somebody when I was doing some work with MSNBC, and somebody dared me to try something, and I did, and it started to make money. I said, I guess we got to figure out how to make it work. So that's. Wow. I understand that you have a play in the works. Is that true?
Yeah, I'm doing a Broadway show.
Is there a Tony on the horizon now?
I think so. I mean, given my track record, I think if not, again, I'll just steal one from Bette Midler, but I'm going to get a Tony because the last thing I do, my friend.
There you go.
I like to talk to the audiences, and I'm going to be doing this in my show at Ram's Head, and because I think people have amazing stories, and if you peel the onion back, they'll tell you anything. And born out of that, some producers saw me doing it in New York, and we ended up doing a off-Broadway and the Broadway version of it. And Frank Oz is the director, and we do this beautiful screen with rear projection, with animation, and we kind of use the animation to tell some stories. But the premise of the show is we're disconnected and sort of nameless and faceless to each other, but if we share stories, we realize we have more in common than we think, and maybe we're not so divisive. It's not a political show, but it's definitely a show where once people get in a room together, they realize, we're all kind of in the same boat together, you've got, you got a dog that poops on the carpet. I got a dog that poops on the carpet. I have a 96-year-old mother that will not go down. You have a 96-year-old. And so Frank got involved because he really loved the idea of sort of connecting people and sharing stories and through sharing stories. So he basically really became a big champion of it. And it's called Permission to Speak. We're going to be doing it at Sellersville, Pennsylvania. We did it in Chicago. We're taking it to outside of New York City and all over Arizona. And it's been great because we've been getting these amazing stories from people that are like funny and like crazy and poignant all at the same time, and like people connecting after the shows and going up and talking to each other. But the stories have just been off the charts. So I may be bringing that. I probably will be bringing back that to the area. So love to talk to you about that again down the road. But that's a really, really, so we're kind of alternating, doing my stand-up one weekend and then my Broadway show another weekend that we're taking out on tour.
Good. But you'll love the Sellersville Theater. That's a really pretty theater. That's a real old one that they restored somewhat recently. And it's a nice crowd up there. It
looks absolutely beautiful, and I'm sure I'm going to get stories. Like I just get them wherever I go, like even just to stand up. Like I had a couple, they were like 74. I go, how did you meet? They go, we met on a website, but they were giggling. I go, what's so funny? They go, well, it's not your typical website. We met on an S&M website. And I'm like, what? And she goes, yeah. And the woman goes, yeah, like I'm a sub, like I'm submissive. He's a dom. And we were looking to hook up, and we hooked up, and then we fell in love, and then we got married. And they literally look like your grandmother and grandfather. It freaks you out. But that's real life. Like people on the outside don't match the inside, and vice versa, right? So, and people would their jaws were on the floor. Like, is this really happening? Did these people really? And sure enough, they did. And I said to her, why is it great to be a sub? She goes, because it's the only, I have a very important job, she said, and I have to be in charge and in control. But it's the only part of my day or my life where I don't have to be in control and somebody else is in control. And that makes sense. And so that's the kind of stuff you get. And, I now join them in S&M sessions. No, I'm just kidding.
So you're the unicorn.
I am. Yeah. Exactly. I want to be the unicorn. No, I want to be. So, yeah.
Well, Paul Mecurio, thank you so much for your time today. I can't wait to see your show on the 9th at Ram's Head. And again, there are still a handful of tickets left. You can get them at ramsheadonstage.com. But before you do that, you want to go visit paulmecurio.com, find out all that's going on there. And that's mecurio.com. Mm-hmm. And safe travels to Annapolis. I can't wait to see you in a couple of weeks. And thank you again so much for your time this afternoon.
Absolutely. Thank you. And people can check out my podcast, Inside Out, with Paul Mecurio, with Paul McCartney, and Kevin Costner, Stephen Colbert, a lot of big names and stuff. And but thank you. This has been a lot of fun, and hope to see you all. And it's not, I know it sounds like we're like whatever. Tickets are going fast, but they actually are. There aren't a lot left, so people should jump on it if they think I'm funny and come on out and hang out. I'd love to see you there and hang out with you a bit too. So thank you for having me. It's been great.
I will absolutely say hello when we're there.
This has been a bonus podcast from Eye on Annapolis. Please visit us at eyeonannapolis.net. Follow us on Facebook at All Annapolis and on Twitter at Eye on Annapolis. And if you haven't subscribed to the Daily News Brief podcast, go for it. And all of your local news will be delivered to your phone, tablet, or smart device by 6 a.m. every Monday through Friday.